Welcome in again, everybody, to the Terry Bowden Show on Auburn Undercover. I'm your co-host, Ronnie Sanders, and I'm joined today, as always, by former Auburn coach Terry Bowden. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Been a big week. You know, we moved this to Saturday. We're on Saturday right now, giving you all a little bit of a weekend video that we'll post up there not long after we get through. But Ron and I went to Auburn this weekend, spent a few days together there. I went to visit my mother, and then we met with our sponsor, Tom Haley, had lunch, and had some good conversations, always looking to see if we can combine his great radio network with this fantastic internet podcast and network that we have with Ronnie, and I had a good time. And it's always good to get back to Auburn. Every time you get back there, you feel a little more at home. I say it every time. I don't think I've been around any college town that has grown more than Auburn. I mean, from time I was there 30 years ago to many people older than me, maybe even 40 years ago, but unbelievable how much that community has grown, how more difficult it is to get around, but it still has that atmosphere of a good old college football town.
It really does. And I remember we lived in Orlando for 12 years.
Uh-huh.
When I started coming back more often, we moved up here. I got lost the first time I went back. I didn't recognize it. And my mom, she went to, she graduated in 74, I think. So she couldn't get around now.
Well, my mother is in assisted living here, and my sister, and she's really in Opelika, but I never, even when I was here, understood where the line is between Auburn and Opelika. Somewhere that line that you go through in between. And now there's so many new places. It's just one huge town, but it's still Auburn. I had a farm, or what do you call it, a lake farm out in Lochapoka, and loved going out that direction. But it is good to get back and good. And it's and the thing about Auburn, and again, we had a great time visiting this week there. It's just there seems to be a positive vibe in Auburn right now. I think, yes, there's probably uncertainty. There's probably a coach that people knew less about when he got here than many coaches. Even when I came in, they didn't know much about me, but they had heard my father was hot at that time. He was already winning big at Florida State. But Golich comes in fresh. But I think there's a positive vibe, and I know we don't like to look over our shoulders, but there's just a lot of negative in Tuscaloosa. I don't know if that's what they like to do.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I know they don't have, there's not a fondness for their head coach, and there's this perception that he's from somewhere else, that he's a little bit different. And so it's not our concern to talk about them, but I just think there's just a good vibe in Auburn right now. And I think
Auburn's got a chance, Auburn's got a chance to kind of, we said this when Freeze came aboard.
Yeah.
But obviously that didn't work out. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, he's already picked up a nickname on the message board. They're calling him the Russian. So,
well, as long as he's rushing, if he rushes into everything he does, that's good. Then he seems to be one of those work kind of guys that has been successful because of his hard work, his work ethic. And those are the kind of things you can, I always used to say, I never always knew I had the best way of doing things, but if we all work together and work as hard as we can, it'll work until we find out the best way to do things, and I've always felt that's a key to do. And this is a critical time for Auburn right now. This is a critical time for the new staff. And I know I can remember coming into Auburn and facing so much uncertainty as the boy, and I know Auburn's had 5 losing seasons in a row, and we had only we were coming off 2. When I got to Auburn, there was 2, and I should say non-winning seasons, because one year Auburn went 5-5-1, the other where they had a losing season, but it was a very negative feel. We had to overcome a lot. People that remember back then, the Eric Ramsey, the NCAA violations, it was all a mess, and Coach Dye having to resign and retire. And there was just a lot of uncertainty. But this is an important time to pull your team together.
Well, big part of that's winter workouts. Talk a little bit.
Oh, yes. And
I remember, my first winter workouts with you. we were talking about a little bit before we came on the air. I'm between Rick Trickett and Joe Whitt. I learned what offensive line coaches were all about.
Well, this is where you find out this is where you start to set your team up for the type of personality that they have, for what you demand from your players. There's an old saying, you get what you demand, and you've got to demand toughness off the bat. You've got to set a standard of how you expect them to respond to everything you do. And off-season program was maybe as much fun to me when I take over a program. And I was one of those coaches that was always building a program, moving on. I ended up coaching at 6 universities, and almost each one was an elevation from the one before. But it was always that time where you say, okay, we're going to establish our toughness. And in the SEC, if Auburn does anything at this point, it's established toughness. I know you got to put the new offense in. The defensive coordinator's back, so there should be some continuity there. So many offensive players from South Florida and coaches from that staff. There should be a lot more continuity than people might think in their days of working on the system and putting the system in. To me, the biggest thing you do right now is set a standard for toughness that is take no prisoners and go from day one. And I think that's the important things, because they'll be doing some on the field work in football. They'll be doing their agility drills, their workout drills, that you do, which combine conditioning and toughness. I always said there's 3 things you've got to try to find out every day in the off season. And I think this would be good for any coach. I didn't make it up. It's something I learned over time. And I learned from coaches that coached before me 50, 60 years ago, that the 3 things you better get a little bit every day. Then this is what football is. 1, teach your kids to go full speed. Whatever drills you do, whether it be mat drills, field drills, players have to learn to go full speed out of habit. That doesn't sound like a difficult thing, but it's often difficult to get. You must get your players to go full speed out of habit. Full speed out of
periods. I remember at Auburn when we changed periods, and we went to from inside drill to Skelly or whatever we were doing, and everybody had to run. I mean, you were always
everywhere
run between periods.
Yeah, and when you do drills, and during the off-season program at Auburn, when they do drills, when they do things that they do, agilities or whatever, when I say you learn to go full speed out of habit, if you think about it, anytime a team loafs and they're not exhausted, then there's something wrong with it. You didn't demand that they go full speed. And when I say full speed out of habit, full speed, it's either a matter of time or distance. Every football play lasts 7 or 8 seconds. The average football play is 7 or 8 seconds. So I would try to make every drill we do last at least 7 or 8 seconds. So they learn to go full speed out of habit for 7 or 8 seconds. Or it's a matter of distance from point A to point B. From where the ball is snapped to where it's tackled, the old pursuit drills that we used to do, on the sack line. So somehow you've got to teach your guys to go full speed out of habit from point A to point B, whether that be distance or time, and make sure that that's happening every time. So when you get to a field, you get to the game, that they go full speed, because that's the earmark of a great football team, especially on defense. The saddest thing, and I still talk to a lot of Florida State people because my dad was there so long, and there's so many guys that played there that I know, and even when I coached there as a young coach, that the rap right now is they don't play hard. They don't play hard like they used to, and that's not a good rap to have. And I think Alabama, to some extent, is dealing with this, and I don't know. They probably don't like me to say that, but I'm just repeating what other people say. You get that rap.
They just don't look very tough. I mean,
that's right.
And it's going from one thing that you did at Auburn was kind of keep some of Coach Dye's toughness.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying DeBoer is not a good coach, because I think he is. But I also think fit is important, and I don't think he fits.
The toughness has got to cut, and the toughness is it shows. And you're right. We were able to keep tough guys. We brought in tough coaches, tough-minded coaches. And as important as that was, we kept tough coaches. There weren't many tougher than Wayne Hall. There weren't many tougher than Rick Trickett. I mean, guys that were just on the field, you just had to hold them back. and they demanded such an excellence in effort. And so that's the first thing you got to do is teach full speed out of habit. Teach your kids to learn to go full speed. And it shows when you turn that video on and watch a team that you've got to play, you can see which ones play faster than others. That's just a matter of going full speed out of habit the entire game. And if you can't go full speed, get your backup in there and let him play until you can go full speed. But that's number one. Number two is perfect discipline. If there's anything you've got to teach every single day, it's perfect discipline. I used to tell my players, I don't care whether you're 1 inch offsides or you're 2 feet offsides. It's still a penalty. It's still a penalty. It's perfect discipline, perfect snap count, everything. And you've got to demand that in all the drills that you do. We used to make a guy run over. If his toe was on the line when he started a drill, in something like you ran over the drill over. So you get that second important thing, perfect discipline, full speed, perfect discipline. And those things got to be done. You see, it was one of the things that I noticed out of Indiana. Not only were they well coached, but they weren't penalized. They hardly ever had penalties. I think they were second or third in the nation.
And you talk about toughness. They're tough. They're hard nosed. And we talked about toughness earlier. Auburn has hired a new, an interesting quality control coach on the offensive line, Chris Kapilovic.
Yeah,
who came from Alabama. And he was a very experienced offensive line coach. I actually worked with him at Southern Miss. Cap really well. And I know he got fired at Alabama, but I'm here to tell you he can coach. He's a really, really good football coach.
Yeah, well, I noticed that with the is it Kapilovic? How do you say his? Yeah. Well, I noticed when he got hired today, I said, well, there's a couple of thoughts. One, when teams don't run the ball well or they don't have a good running attack, and Alabama did not have a real good running attack, they blame the offensive line coach. They blame the offensive line. Now, philosophically, whoever's calling those plays, whoever's designing the offense in the spring, where they work on and execute the number of runs and the number of passes and making sure the running game ties into the passing game, those decisions are made in the spring, and they're made without that offensive line coach making most of those decisions. And yet if they don't run the ball well, or the guy calling the plays doesn't call a lot of running plays, or he calls running plays on first down and second and short,
or the back misses the block, or the quarterback's holding on the ball too long,
but the linemen get the blame. And so, but I think so. One, I'm thinking the offensive line coach could very well do a great job, and he was stuck in a situation that he could not control. And then two, I don't know if it adds on. I always like to have a coach from the bad guy from the other side just to see what's going on. Anything you could, every little bit helps, now people
don't have to change their signals. We know that.
Yeah, well, I'll say he's going to know the nuances of their offensive staff, the nuances of what they like to call. You practice over and over again against an offensive team in practice day to day to day. You get a good book on the offensive play caller. You understand in certain situations he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And I think it won't be long if at Auburn, the new staff, surely they understand, and they will if they don't. There are a lot of big games when you coach at Auburn, but there's only one big game, that's Alabama. And every day of your life, you need to do something that prepares you to beat Alabama. And bringing over someone from the other side, a good coach, one, but two, someone that understands them is something that you that can't hurt you. I was thinking that it can't hurt you. But anyway, I think that was a good pickup as an analyst. Nowadays, you can hire about who you want to hire when it comes to analysts. And I still can't believe how many coaches you can hire nowadays. So, you can hire almost anybody that you want to. But let me go back to, let's say this before I get through with talking about the off season and what they're doing right now at almost every school is, one, teach your kids to go full speed out of habit. In whatever you do, full speed out of habit, perfect discipline out of habit, perfect discipline in everything that you do, and you get what you demand. If you let your kids line up off sides in practice, they're going to line up off sides in a game. If you let them keep jumping off the snap count, if a team is always jumping off sides on the snap count, then you allow that to happen in practice somewhere. You allowed that to happen in practice. And I told my coaches, hey, you get what you demand. Somewhere in practice, you let that kid do that. It's going to cost you in a football game. And the final thing that I used to tell my coaches, and on every single day we're out there and whatever drills we're doing, whether it's in the weight room, you're doing reps, or you're on the field doing sprints, you have to ask yourself, ask themselves the question, will you fight or will you quit? Are you going to fight or you're going to quit? That doesn't mean walk off the field and quit. That means when you're competing against 3 other guys and you stop caring who wins. I don't care what the drill is. You got to learn to compete every single day out there. You got to learn to compete. And I always tell my kids, you got to ask yourself, are you going to fight or are you going to quit? When you get tired, are you going to fight or are you going to quit? When it's 95 degrees, you've been on the field for 16 plays on defense, and it's 4th and 1 on the goal line, are you going to fight or are you going to quit? And I think those are the things that you've got to establish, because if you're going to play great SEC football, it's a toughness game. It's a toughness game.
And the strength coach, talk about how important the strength coach is.
God, strength coach is probably, and I think it's probably this way still, because of the amount of time. Used to be, you only had a 20-hour rule. The offensive coaches and defensive coaches could not be with the players very long. Now you're allowed a little more leeway now. The rules have opened up some. But the coach that's with your players the most is the strength coach. He's with them early in the morning. He's leaving 12 months out of the year. He's their coach. He's their motivator. He's their psychologist. He's their preacher. He is their everything. And that guy becomes the guy. And you have to have a great strength coach who really develops your players when those coaches are on the road recruiting, or when they're doing all their recruiting things, or when they're sitting in their staff room putting together the offense and the defense during the off season. Who's with the players? The strength coaches and his staff. And so Auburn's
together. When you're putting a staff together, I always thought strength coach, from a coaching standpoint, strength coach, offensive line, secondary. What are your most important positions from a coaching standpoint? What do you look for?
Well, and again, it's a little different from some people, but you hit it with offensive line coach. Now, I was an offensive play caller. As a head coach, I call plays, and some do and some don't. That doesn't mean you're better or worse. The Spurriers call plays. Gus Malzone call plays. Some do and some don't, and it's hard to be one if you're not. But if you're an offensive play caller, you better have an offensive line coach. Number one, that was the first thing I went after. Rick Trickett, pick him up for me. He's now with West Virginia and Rich Rodriguez there. Still, I think he's 76 years old, still going strong.
77.
And then after offensive line coach to me, or maybe before or even, is a defensive coordinator. So I think your coordinators, your offensive line coach. And I probably agree with you on secondary. And you've got to understand the back end. There's 7 up front and there's 4 in back. And so many coaches coach with their back to the 4 defensive backs. They coach from the linebacker position. They coach looking at the front 7, and they don't bring the back in, the 4 guys behind you. So you need to have somebody back there that knows how to get the secondary to blend in with the front, because everything's about 11 people to the ball. So
yes, it's funny you say that. I've had this same conversation with Jimbo Fisher about 50 times, and he says it's word for word. I like when we were talking about defense coordinator when he got the Florida State job. He's like, I want a secondary coach. I want somebody who can tie it all together.
Right.
And, it's hard for a defensive line coach a lot of times.
No, and you don't see as many defensive line coaches who are the coordinators. Now, linebackers, because again, a lot of linebacker coaches, because they can stand behind their linebackers. They can coach the front 7, but also have a feel for their monster and their support people and all those things. But even if you have a coordinator that coaches from that middle area right there, and I had some good ones. Wayne Hall, again, coached for me. He coached linebackers when he was with me and coached from that position. And then I had Brother Oliver. He coached secondary, and he stood behind that secondary and saw the whole thing there. And so again, but again, that's just having the right kind of staff. But I think the key is toughness. You mentioned strength coach. I think that's important. And I think in the SEC where so much of it, it's about toughness and establish yourself for that kind of toughness. Not only is that what it takes to win, but that's what the fans expect. SEC probably has as smart a group of fans or as knowledgeable a group of fans as anybody, and they know when you play hard, and they know when you never give up, and they support you for doing that. But should be interesting. Great time of the year in this off season. I think spring ball starts on March 17th. We're not that far away. We're about less than a month away for spring ball starting on the 17th. Ends on April 18th. Which and I noticed we're going to have a inter squad game, which a lot of guys went away from. I'm glad they do. I think the fans want to come and see the new coach, the new team, and to see how they play. Now you're going to see a pretty fast football team because they play fast. And everybody, there's nothing new about playing fast. I mean, you were with Larry Fedora. You were with Larry Fedora back when playing fast was still kind of novel. It was kind of a new thing. He played fast,
Oh, he would sit in there and say, he's like, hey, I'm sitting around one day and he's like, you know what? We go fast in 2 minutes. Why can't we go fast every play? That's what I like.
Well, yeah, it's a great
85 plays. And if we got 85 plays, he had all these metrics. And one of them was, 85 plays, and, one of them was turnovers, and one of them was, tackle for loss, and one of them was, yak, yards after catch and or yards after contact. And I mean, and when we hit, I think it was 8 or 9 of those 12 goals, whatever it was. I mean, we won the football game almost every time.
Well, anyway, they're going to play fast. Now I'm going to say this because I've lived through huddles. I've lived through sending. I've lived through calling plays and sending every play with an offensive guard or with a receiver and running that guy into the huddle. I started out that type of way, and I think we're kind of back to the point now where playing fast all the time is not necessarily what everybody does. A lot of schools going back to the huddle. I think the key today, and although I think we're going to play fast, I like the idea, like you said, you get a lot more practice work in. You cover a lot more plays, and so playing fast is definitely, you learn to get in shape and play over and over again. But in today's football game, almost all defenses have played fast. That's what they practice every day, playing fast. So the novelty of it is not as new, but it's still, if you execute it very, very well, it does cause some problems. And so, but now you're gonna see that against quite a few teams in the SEC, even playing fast, that come from people who did that. The key is execution, fundamental sound, and execution in what you're doing. And I really think, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit. I want to talk about the SEC and how they're kind of ranking them coming in. But I still really think that we learned a lot from Indiana this year. I don't know that we don't like to say, boy, they do coach good football up in the Big Ten, or they know what they're doing. But I think we saw some things out of Indiana. We weren't, after the first year, we still probably didn't accept it. Well, they got lucky. It's like my first year at Auburn. We got lucky. Well, we won the next 9 straight the next year. But I think we saw something in Indiana. I think every coach and every coaching staff needs to pay close attention because they won with X's and O's as well as Jimmy's and Joe's. I think because we're in a recruiting part of the country where we know whoever gets a Bo Jackson, whoever gets a Herschel Walker, whoever gets a great this or a great that, you got a chance to win because of that guy. But I think in Indiana, of all the top of the 12 teams in the playoff, let's throw out Tulane and what was the other, James Madison, throw those two out. They had less 5-star and 4-stars than any of the other 10 teams in the playoffs. Indiana had less of the players that were the number one guys picked in recruiting.
And I still think, he was, it's the second year, and he brought all those guys, and Kolisch is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
He brought all those guys with you from the previous school. And there's a ton of new players on Auburn's roster, but we mentioned the conference. How do you break the conference down? I mean, it's already, I know it's early, but
well, and I think, and let me finish my point. And again, I think the key is let's make sure we hold our coaches accountable, and head coaches hold your staff accountable. It's very safe to say all you win football players. Coaching it's 1A and 1B. Let's say it's 1A and 1B. You better have great players, but you better coach better than the other guys because some guys are coaching better than other guys. We've seen that, and we know that to be true. When the coaching staff comes in, all of a sudden they take the previous group and they win more games. They're doing something that wasn't being done with the same people. So that's true. But anyway, we've got 6 or 8 new coaches in the conference. I forget what the number is, but there's a lot of new coaches in the conference. But I've seen some of the preseason SEC 16 teams, how they rank. And I think Auburn's probably in, Auburn right now, and one of them that I saw is around 10 or 11, right? Almost a little bit below the top 8. But I think when you look at the teams, I think you always have a top 3 or 4 and a bottom 3 or 4 in that middle group, And I think most people with Georgia, because of the way they have played, they've won the SEC championship 2 times in a row and really haven't been championship caliber. They haven't had the same caliber of team they had when they won their 2 championships, but they still won the SEC. And so they have to, obviously, they got to get a little better at the running game. I still think they got to get a little better pressure from their defensive front like they did back when they were really good. Run the ball just a tad more. But they're still going to be probably number 1. And then after that, you see people picking LSU. LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, or Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss. I think you can go. The way I look at Georgia, LSU probably. And I guess you give a lot of credit. I think Lane Kiffin has proven he can bring in good football players, And
they'll spend money, they're going to spend money. And Texas is sitting out there too. I mean, you got Arch Manning is an interesting story. Peyton Manning didn't have a great year, his first year at Tennessee, but he certainly had a great career.
Yeah.
So Texas will be
well, let me go down the group, and whether we pick this group right or wrong or above or below. Georgia has got a lot of people quarterback coming back, and they are going to be there until somebody knocks them off. I think they've got a chance to be, if they can, like I say, get a little bit better at championship caliber defense, but a quarterback coming back, and still need to get to that elite edge that they have not been. They've been SEC tops, but not that national championship chops. And after that, I think LSU. The only reason you can put that, they picked up Sam Levitt out of the he was the number 1 quarterback really in the portal. They picked up Sam Levitt, the quarterback out of Arizona State, and I think many people were picking him as the top quarterback in the portal. And they went out and got him and brought him into their program. And I think he's a very good quarterback. If you watched Arizona State play last year, he brings them up. Then they went out there and got good. They went out there and put the money into it, NIL money into it, and did a great job there. And I'll say this, Texas, because of the players that Texas picked up a couple of great running backs. They picked up Cameron went to Texas. Coleman went to Texas. They just did a great job. And I think every school also needs to be very honest with themselves. Don't get too hung up on the old way of doing things completely. I mean, the fact is, if there's 4 or 5 great players out there, then get in the bid for them. Get in the bid for them, because you can be a great coach a lot better with better players, But I think that's LSU, because of Sam Levitt. They kept their defensive coordinator, and I think the one thing that they got that gives them a chance, because Lane Kiffin, he's not the play caller. When they brought in the offensive coordinator from Ole Miss, Charlie Weiss Jr. That's the key. That's why I think they've got a chance to really offensively. They got a quarterback. They've got the play caller from Ole Miss. That means you're going to see virtually the same offense at LSU that he presented to them at Ole Miss. You've got your Baker. You've got your defensive coordinator back. Puts them in a pretty good situation with what they've done with NIL. So again. But what is expected? They've been given much. They're going to be expected much. I think the over-under on LSU is about 9.5 games. So they've got to be 10 wins this year just to have a decent year.
You talk about the toughness of the conference. I was just looking here. I didn't realize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? 7 teams out of 16 had at least 10 wins.
Yeah.
And four of those had 11. If you got 12, 11, 13, 11. And I mean, and 3 more with 10. I mean, that's a pretty tough. That's an amazing.
Well, and you can't hardly have an easy conference schedule. You can't there's so many good teams. But anyway, after LSU, I'd probably take Texas, maybe Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's quarterback. I think he's okay. He's good. I just don't know that he's great. I just think he's good. He's not great in Oklahoma, but you got a defensive coordinator, head coach. They've got to be a little bit better on offense to be the top. But anyway, then Alabama is still up there. They've still got players. They're still top 4 or 5 right now. But there's going to be a hot seat going on there, and it better be produced or not, or things may change. Ole Miss got a lot of good players. They kept a lot of good players, and they've got a lot of good players. At this point, I think Chambliss has been given the okay, at least by the judge in Ole Miss. Anybody question whether a judge in Ole Miss would not make sure that he was going to be at least allowed to play until they reach some kind of conclusion? But I think Ole Miss, because we said Charlie Weiss Jr., the offensive coordinator, went to LSU, I thought the most important signing they could have was not a player but an offensive coordinator to make sure they got somebody, because it was their offense did a phenomenal job of mixing the run in with the pass and developing their offense. After that, LSU, Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. Then A&M. A&M lost their last 2 games. They got to get their mojo back. They were so hot. They lost their final game against Texas. They lost the first round in the playoffs. And so they kind of got brought back down to earth. But they do have a quarterback that Marcel Reed, who is a pretty good quarterback, and they've got him coming back, and that's a key. After that, South Carolina, Missouri, both those teams really. I think South Carolina, to me, there's a little bit of a hot seat to me.
Oh yeah, there's
that with Lenore Sellers at quarterback, he was gifted, probably one of the most gifted quarterbacks in the league, but a very mediocre year. Offensive line was atrocious. They couldn't protect the quarterback. They had a very bad year for what they were expected to have. So although they are probably mid-levels in the conference, he's going to have to put up a little bit. I think Shane Beamer, it needs to really see the year to come on with him. Missouri and Missouri, Missouri, I think they're about as well coached as you can get in Drinkwitz.
He does an unbelievable job.
He does a great job of just reloading and playing good football. And if you're not ready to play
facilities, and they spend a ton of money on players. I mean, you look at the facilities up there and the stadium upgrades, and that's a hard job, but it's a lot better job than it was.
Well, he does a great job. I think he's proven that he's going to line up with a good football team. If you don't play well, he's going to beat you. Yep. And so he's a good, solid football coach. Like I say, he lost 2 quarterbacks last year, ended up going with his third one, and struggled at the end because he lost Horn, his first quarterback, or he was rotating quarterbacks. The very first series, he lost 1 for the year. Then later on, Probuli lost his other one, and then he ended up playing a true freshman. They weren't very good till he got comfortable a little bit more. But anyway, if they get their quarterback situation, and then you got Florida and Auburn. Now, to me, this is these were 2 coaches I really liked. When I looked at who's going to get a good coach, I said, you know what? I'm a big John Summerall fan. Just got coached against him, at Troy. I coached against him. He did a phenomenal job of winning immediately at Troy. They won the conference 2 straight years after they weren't very good the year before. Then he goes to Tulane, and they were pretty good. Willie Fritz did a good job there, but left to go to Houston. But he just kept them going right on. He kept and he found quarterbacks.
And a lot of times that's harder to do than flipping it.
I know. I absolutely. When you take over a program that's doing real well, you got to really put it together. And he got a Menza, he got a quarterback, and they had a great year. Then he replaced Menza with Retzlaff from BYU, and came and did a great job last year. And now I think that'll be interesting. I think that's going to be a battle we'll enjoy watching. Florida and Auburn is about how far they and how well they do with these new coaches, because both programs have a lot of a chance to be successful and be very good.
And they play the 3rd game of the season, Auburn and Florida again. That's if you remember when the conference split in divisions in '92. Auburn's traditional rivals were outside of Alabama and Georgia were Tennessee and Florida. and all of a sudden they're in the East.
Well, Florida more so. Even when I was there, Florida was every year. I mean, Tennessee was at twice every 6 years. But Florida was that team from the we had Georgia and we had Florida from the East, and you had them every year. So and they were back then. Florida had gotten Spurrier, and right before I got to Auburn, Spurrier had just gone to Florida, and he really turned the whole conference on their ear now because everybody was wanting to run the ball and did run the ball, but he decided he would pass first, run second, and did it with a lot of really good quarterbacks, but a good system at there. But anyway, middle of the league. Then after Auburn, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Mississippi, Kentucky, Arkansas. That's kind of how the conference kind of runs down top 16. So anyway, there's just a lot of new coaches, and
just counting down here from a new coach standpoint, we've got Ole Miss. Got. I'm just looking down through here.
Kentucky, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, and LSU.
And Arkansas. So
Arkansas. Yeah, got the guy from Memphis, and so you got a lot of new coaches there, and I think that's not something that's unusual with the money they're paying now and the expectations they now have. They're not going to give you a whole lot of time. You're going to be expected to win fairly quickly if you to get a program going.
And now with Indiana winning the national championship, the Arkansas and the South Carolinas and the Kentuckys of the world are going to be wondering why they can't do the same thing.
Well, I mean, again, get the right guy, bring in the right people. You ought to be able to do it. I mean, Indiana did have one of the worst programs in America. They were a basketball school, and they brought in a guy from a group of five in Kurt Signetti, and he brought a ton of his players with him from James Madison. Of course, almost ran the table the first year, and then actually did it the second year. And so I think that's that's kind of why I think most coaching staffs need to pay attention and look and see what they did and how they went about doing it.
On look at Vanderbilt. Again, that's you talk about guys
10 wins.
10 wins at Vanderbilt.
Well, let's look at our schedule because you mentioned Florida, you mentioned Vanderbilt. There's a lot of the early teams on our schedule, and it's kind of an interesting schedule in that Baylor is a game. I don't know why we're playing. I'll be honest with you. I guess Atlanta's okay. I just hate to give up a home game to go to Atlanta.
There was NIL money involved, but I think that's look. John Cohen has done a good job. All those things. I do think that. Not knowing, we talked about this a little bit at lunch the other day.
Yeah.
Not having a background at Auburn and not understanding, I think that, how Georgia Tech and Georgia and Tennessee and, on and on didn't want to come play in Auburn. Alabama didn't want to come play in Auburn.
And Coach Todd got Alabama there. We could, but that was a battle. But even before that, Georgia would not play. They played in Columbus. Tennessee played in Birmingham, Auburn. It was just you couldn't get Georgia Tech wouldn't play in Auburn. This goes way back historically. But I'm just thinking you got a new coach. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to beat the AD up or say I just got a brand new coach. You got maybe one of the most difficult places to play a football game in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Got to open up at Jordan-Hare. New coach, and open up at Jordan-Hare.
Home games. I can't remember the last time Auburn had less than 7 home games. In some years, 8. But now with 6 home games, that's Auburn people aren't real fond of that. And again,
it's there. It's a critical game. We'll get more people there. We'll get more people in the stadium than they will. But it isn't Jordan-Hare. It isn't the stadium. It isn't outdoors. It didn't got that eagle angle. Wherever he flies, he's got to hope he doesn't get caught up in the rafters because it's going to be indoor, and it's just a different atmosphere. So it's there. I think we're 7.5. The early line is like 7.5. But that's a critical game. And we don't need to get into all that too much, but I always look and see, okay, it's having a year that's a special year. And I almost wish I could talk to that team. Just say, listen, you're facing some adversity that we faced back in 93. You're coming in there. Expectations probably from other people aren't where they need to be, and Baylor becomes a big one because after Baylor, I think you got 3, Southern Miss, Florida, Vandy. Everybody's got a problem. Everybody's got to do something, Southern Miss is group of 5 and not going to be at the level. But Florida coming off of 4 and 8, Vandy without the quarterback. That's to me, Vandy, I don't know that the program has changed that much. Clark Lee was 2 I think he was like 3-9 and 5-6 before that quarterback came in.
He
then
was
the quarterback,
but other than the quarterback, and I think he brought in Jerry Kill, and he changed the entire way. And people who don't know who Jerry Kill is,
I know.
Minnesota, was a head coach in Northern Illinois, I guess. Before that, it was head coach at one in New Mexico State, which nobody done. And so, unbelievable job. And I think he really came in and changed the structure of the program, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But obviously, the quarterback has a lot to do with it.
Well, obviously, and what I was thinking as I watched them play, the quarterback was a generational quarterback for Vanderbilt. They don't come around very often. He was a winner in a big way, and every time he stepped on the field, they had a chance to win. And all I was saying was, no matter what they did, the 2 years that Clark Lee was there without Diego Pavia, they were losing. The first year wasn't very good at all. The next year was kind of almost a winning season. And then you had two winning seasons in a row. The last year, it was even better. And now they've got to go out there and see, like you say, is it going to be a different philosophy, a different style? James Franklin did a pretty good job there before he went to Penn State. So I think there's a wait and see for Vanderbilt. But anyway, as I look at Auburn's games with Florida and Vanderbilt, Florida's got, they're 4-8. They've got to show what they can do. They've got to show they can turn their program around. Can they do it faster than Auburn does it? So if you can get by Baylor, Southern Miss, Florida, Vandy, actually Florida, Vandy, Tennessee, you've got I think you got teams there that won't necessarily be preseason favored, to win the game. I think in all those games, you're either favored, even, or a slight underdog, in all those games, and a great way to start. Because I think having a year, if you could just, like I say, have a great offseason, get great preparation, and then because I think when you hit the next three, you're going to hit the better part of the conference. Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. You're going to hit that. It's going to be a little bit better part of the conference, and two of those are away. Georgia and Ole Miss on the road when you're going to hit that. And so, but anyway, the way I look, it should be, again, you take them one at a time. It's too early to know for sure, but great off-season program. Get your toughness on that football team because I think the season, I look at it, say, I think there's probably 4 teams you're going to be underdog. There'll be 8 teams you're either going to be favored a little bit, toss up, or underdog a little bit, and that's what you got to do. And that'd be. I think anybody in there, anybody that loves Auburn would say, if you get to 8, you've got a pretty good year started,
no doubt,
to get yourself moving in the right direction.
Especially after the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, how it was. And the thing that I cannot gauge, that I was always, when I stepped into a program, and I took over a lot of programs that were not winning. I mean, from Auburn to Sanford to Salem to ULM to Akron, and a lot of schools that were not winning when I got there. It's a little bit more difficult to do it when you're winning. But the biggest difference is we bring in so many transfers. I don't know if they lived the last 5 years. When I came in, Stan White was tired of losing. When I came in, Wayne Gandy was tired of losing. A lot of players were tired. James Bostic, a lot of those guys were tired of losing. They came to Auburn because Auburn was tearing it up in the 80s, was tearing the league up. And so they were tired of losing. And the only thing I think coaches have to do now, they've got to take a group of players that they don't – I don't know if they identify with those losses. I don't know if they identify with – we got to turn this thing around. It's up to us to take Auburn back to where it was. And that's not just Auburn. That's all these schools that are now facing building programs and building tradition in a system that doesn't allow you to have tradition. It doesn't allow you to have kids grow up. I think I was kidding around with Tom Haley. We had lunch the other day. I said, I hope all the players know how to sing War Eagle as fast as we sing it after a victory. You got it. There's a way to do War Eagle, the fight song, and then there's the right way to do the fight song.
That's right.
And anybody that gets to Auburn playing football knows the right way to do that fight song after a victory. And when you see guys come and go so fast, you say, boy, I hope they learn it.
Well,
I have,
you hope they have a great college experience.
well, I've got to admit, when I left Akron, I was an analyst at Clemson for a couple of years. And so I got to Clemson, and so I'm enjoying it. I'm not, for the first time in my life, I'm not in the main chair. I'm just sitting back watching the staff and see how they work together. And I didn't think about the little things maybe that I would have thought about if I was a head coach. And we win our first game at home. Well, they got a tradition where you stand in the middle of the field and you sing the alma mater. Well, I don't know a single word to the alma mater. So the old saying, watermelon, watermelon, watermelon. So I just managed to move until I learned it by the next week. That's for sure, because I did not do what you got to do. You've got to know the alma mater that they sing at halftime, and at Auburn, you got to know how to do the fight song at halftime. I mean, after a good win in that locker room, like we used to do back then. So anyway, should be it's a good time of year now to get started. I mean, get it started right now. I talked to a coach on an SEC school yesterday. We're talking about what they're doing right now. They've got a little bit of time to work on their football drills, but they're doing a lot of weightlifting, getting bigger, stronger, faster, getting the new players to adapt into their program. There's no time for hazing or making a guy have to learn. You got to take them right under your wing right away. They've got to feel like they're a part. Those days of freshmen having to be freshmen and wait their turn. We have too many guys that we want them to win and do it now. So it should be a good. Yeah, they are. But
before we go, talk a little bit about our sponsor.
Yeah, Tom Haley again. We want to thank always Tom Haley and the Haley Red Management Group, especially Tom Haley Family Foundation, the Haley family, what they do for Auburn, what they have continued to do in Auburn and in the city of Auburn. And I know the university means a lot to Tom and his group. Got my phone ringing to me. I didn't turn my phone off. But we want to appreciate Tom and helping to sponsor this show and bringing Auburn back. And so we look forward to having him and doing the show throughout the year and doing a little bit more and maybe breaking down the football team next week as we get closer and closer. But thank him and all that he does. And thank you all for joining in with us. And let's get ready for it. Make sure you circle that. Derek Wilson. Do you believe that? All right, that's my fault. I'm not gonna like cut and repeat. I'm just gonna try to turn my phone off. But anyway, appreciate Tom Haley and him and all those, and look forward to seeing y'all next week.
And thanks to everybody for tuning in. And click like and subscribe. It helps keep us in your feed. And we'll see you next week.